Welcome to Bennett's Bike Social. We are in southern Spain with Triumph on the launch of their new 1200 Scrambler. Now for 2024 you've got two models. You've got the XE and you've got the X, which replaces the XC. Now before, when you had the Triumph Scrambler, you basically had very similar bikes with very similar spec. But Triumph have really put a channel down the middle, so you've got two very different bikes that benefit from similar tweaks. They both share the same 1200cc platform, which has got improved torque for 2024. The quoted torque isn't anymore, and quoted power isn't anymore, which is 89 bhp. But what they've done is increased the torque lower down in the mid-range. So peak torque is slightly less in the rev range, so it's 250 RPM less, and there's more of a beef amount of torque in the lower down. But the big transformation, aside from the engine, is really the chassis and the setup. Now what Triumph have done is quite unusual, because usually when we launch 2024 models or 2025 models, the bike has got this and it's got that, and it's another £1,000 more or another £1,500 more. But Triumph have actually cut the price of these two new models, despite the fact obviously inflation and the cost of living is increasing. So first with the big XE, before that had only suspension on the back and it had shower on the front, fully adjustable. Now we've got Marzocchi front and rear, but the Marzocchi setup is near enough identical to what it was with Öhlins. But instead of having that nice gold Öhlins sticker, you've got Marzocchi, which makes it a little bit more cost effective. We've still got the off-road and the off-road promos. That is a dedicated big Scrambler. So we are in Spain. We're at Triumph, heading to the off-road adventure experience. So I'm on the top of the range, 21-inch front wheel XE, but interestingly they've changed the spec of the suspension. So in very simple terms, what Triumph have done is created two very different big Scrambler 1200s. Both get the same engine with the same improvements, with improved torque, the new exhaust routing, new heat shield. But then you've got two different stories. So you've got one with, which is the one we're on now, which is the premium model with more informative clocks, fully adjustable front and rear, lean sensitive rider aids, multiple rider modes, cornering ABS and massive style ever brakes. But because it's now Marzocchi and slightly less spec on the suspension, it's a little bit cheaper, 300 or 400. And then you got the base model, which has now got lean sensitive rider aids, which it didn't have before. Suspension is a little less than before, non-adjustable, but it's got the same torque as this, same power as this, but that is, if I remember rightly, £700 to £800 cheaper. But what is a big transformation is this little baby, which is the X. Because for riders of my stature, 5'7", that's quite a big bike, and this is far less intimidating. So again, we've changed the spec a little. We've got Marzocchi front and rear, but it's non-adjustable with preload on the rear. We've got different clocks that have got TFT, not as sophisticated as the clocks on the XE. But the all-important bit for me is that the seat is lower and suspension travel is lower. We've still got a 21-inch front wheel, and we can still fit off-road bias tyres, but this is far more accessible and far easier to get along with than the big XE. And beforehand I had real trouble with the XE, and a lot of riders my height did, but this is so much accessible and so much lighter. What's also interesting, despite this being reduced by around £800 in cost, it gets more advanced rider aids than previous. So we've now got an IMU which measures lean sensitive ABS and lean sensitive traction control. So we're back on the road, but now we're on the standard, easier to manage lower X model. So Marzocchi suspension again, but this time non-adjustable front, a little adjustment on the rear. Travel is 170mm, so we've got less travel than the big XE. Makes it more accessible. Still got a 21-inch front, but it doesn't really feel like it's got a 21-inch front. This is kind of like the XE for me. Oh. Same torque and power as the bigger, more expensive version, We got Nissan brakes rather than Brembo dilemmas, and there is an obvious difference there. It does everything you want it to do. It's only when you like push it a little too hard. But what a great little bike. It's not little, stop calling it little. It's a 1200 and it's fun. Ground clearance, a little bit of an issue. Maybe if you're a bit heavier you might need a bit of suspension on it, but apart from that, that is a good fun bike. So we're on the new XE. I've gone for off-road. As an off-road pro, in off-road pro you've got no TC, no ABS. In the pro we've got some TC and some ABS, but it's designed to be used in an off-road situation. So as long as if I switch off and switch back on again, it saves my mode. But if I switch off the ignition, it won't save my mode, because obviously if you're in off-road you ain't got any ABS, or it's not road biased ABS. You do know there's no hiding away from the fact that it's a heavy bike, and my legs are a little bit sprayed, they're not very, but the bar position's good. So to summarise with the XE, still the big bad boy, still the daddy, a little bit more torque, big Brembo style lemmas are new, and we've got Marzocchi suspension instead of the all-in shower combination. On the X, we've got Nissan brakes, a little less spec on the clocks, not as adjustable, but way more accessible, and lower seat height, which can drop even further if you fix the accessories seat. So if you go for the accessories low seat, you actually get under 800mm on seat height, which is impressive for this bike, because you've got to remember, this was a really tall bike with the previous XE. Both share the same power, both share the same gearbox. Obviously there's difference in swinging arm length and wheelbase due to the length of the swinging arm and the larger suspension. I thought I would really love the XE, which I think in terms of looks and styling, it has it over the standard X. In terms of appeal, it also has it over the X. But I just like the accessibility of the X. I think this makes the Scrambler more appealing for more riders. I think this is what a lot of riders wanted, because they loved the stature and the looks of the XE, but they just wanted something a little bit easier to get along with. It's still capable off-road, and I guess 90% of the people who buy this bike are probably not going to go off-road. But now it's more accessible, it's got improved rider aids, it's got improved tech, and we've got a little bit more torque, and it's cheaper. So the XE comes in at 13,295. The little X that I'm on is 11,895. And as I say, share the same torque, same power, similar looks. We're just a little bit more accessible, a little less adjustment on suspension, and in many ways much easier to ride on road and off road. It's your decision at the end of the day. I know a lot of riders over 6 foot really prefer the stature and looks of the XE, but I think what Triumph have done is just made the big Scrambler 1200 range far more accessible, far easier, without losing any of its looks and style and appeal, and it's still capable off road.